Can I start off by welcoming everybody? Welcome ladies, welcome gents.
Yay!
My name's Caroline Cooksey and I'm Workforce Director for NHS Dumfries and Galloway, and on behalf of myself and Maria Cleary, who some of you might know from within the council, Maria's unfortunately not able to be here today, but we would like to welcome you to this Let's Talk Menopause event. We are so privileged to be able to have looking after us today, Nelson Brown.
Oh, that's my pleasure. Thank you.
And also Dr. Heather Curry. And it's a really special opportunity for us to get together in an environment, in a place which is not NHS, it's not council, it's somewhere that is about feeling a bit special and being looked after in the context of being a woman and just having a special time.
At the very beginning of this journey, I was focused more on hair and what it does to the hair. But since then, I've learned it's not just hair, it's mind, it's skin. And then suddenly, over the processes of working alongside me a little bit, she's a bit more empowered. And today she came in from Milan to go to the shows in Paris, and that's all over 2 weeks. So that starts from sharing it with these guys, and now I'm sharing it with you. Okay, so finishing. Now I can fasten all the hair together, cure it against the head.
Because I think hairdressers have a fantastic opportunity to be counsellors, actually, because often in the hairdressers, people offload. They relax, they offload, they tell hairdressers all sorts of things. And I know a hairdresser that I've known for many years who actually found she was doing a lot of counselling as she was hairdressing and thought, actually I can do this, this is really good. So she went off and did various courses and she's now a therapist.
Is that right?
Instead of being a hairdresser. And I've always thought it is a great way to get information to people or to support people or give them a chance to offload. So. Yeah. Because so many women now are in the age range of menopause, and why we set up this evening is because within NHS and council are huge employers in every region and huge employers of women. So when we did some work earlier, when we were on the BBC Breakfast programme, we looked at some figures, and huge numbers of our staff are women, and many of them are aged over 45. Do any of you sweat at night? And sweaty hair. So you're not just going to leave that, really.
No,
you're
it's
going to want to wash that. So sweats at night and flushes, that's the commonest symptom. And the reason for that is because when we go low in estrogen, the thermostat in our brain goes a bit wonky. So there is a bit in our brain that that reacts to body temperature. So if our internal body got too hot, like if you have a virus, a fever or something, then that's not good for your internal organs. So the brain gets the message that this is too hot, we need to cool down. So it opens up little blood vessels in the surface to dissipate, to get rid of heat. Okay. And that's the flush. And you often feel it coming up and going right up. And then the sweat is the sweat glands getting rid of getting rid of sweat, and it's all around getting rid of heat. Okay. So the thermostat thinks you're overheating when you're not. So during a normal day, your body temperature goes through little ups and downs, but that's okay, it doesn't trigger anything. But when we become low in estrogen and other chemicals involved as well, it means that the thermostat thinks we're overheating when we're not. So there was a question at the back there. Yeah? Pardon?
When can it stop?
When does it stop? That's a really good question. When does it stop? So you hear lots of people saying, oh, I'm through that by now, I'm past it, that was way in the past. But actually, if we think about the underlying thing, which is being low in estrogen, I don't want to sound depressing, but that's with us forever. So unless we replace the estrogen, we're always going to be low in estrogen. But what does change is how it's affecting us. So the consequences of low estrogen, we divide into sort of early signs, intermediate and long term. And it's really important to know about all of them, because lots of women aren't aware of what else is happening in the body. They just think, oh, it's the flushes, and then they might stop, and then that's it, don't need to worry about it anymore. So the early signs of being low in estrogen, as I've explained, the thermostat goes wonky. So the flushes and the sweats is one thing. Mood swings, joint aches, disturbed sleep, all these things. But they're not going to affect everyone. And some women have none of these signs at all. Their body seems to just readjust to being low in estrogen without having any effects from that. How long those early, we call these early symptoms, how long they go on for varies between every single one of us. So some women have none of these at all.
Right.
Some women have these severe symptoms. Some women might have them for a few months or a year or two. Some women in the 70s and 80s are still having flushes and sweats. So it varies enormously. If it was just about becoming low in estrogen, we would all be affected in exactly the same way, but clearly we're not. So that's the trigger, but there's lots of other chemicals and factors, and diet and lifestyle can affect it. So diet and lifestyle is enormously important, and if we don't get any other messages across, what I'd really love is that women, when they start having signs of ovaries changing, ovarian function changing, menopausal symptoms, if they then also realised, okay, so my body's different now, so what do I need to do now to invest in my future health? So many of us, we're all working. So everyone here is working, NHS or council, and we often have families, we often have elderly relatives. We're maniacs really, aren't we? I mean, what we expect of ourselves is just crazy.
Haven't you got your own chef and cook that does that? Wouldn't that be?
So our weight does often change, with age related, but also with menopause to some extent. But more what happens is where we have the fat, so the fat distribution. So
where estrogen
influences to be the sort of nice pear shape, whereas we're lower on estrogen, we tend to go more towards the apple shape like the men are. Sorry, you're not really, but sort of round the middle. And there's, when you put a pair of jeans on, I think, oh, and that just really makes you feel, from the beginning of the day, doesn't it really, when you've got that extra bit around the middle. So there isn't a magic answer, but it just gives us the trigger, I think, or would hopefully give us the trigger to focus on. So there's theoretical things. So for example, with tablet form of HRT, there's a slight increased risk of having a blood clot, a deep vein thrombosis. And so if you have risk factors for that, such as a personal past history of that, or a family history, or if you're overweight and you're more at risk, then we tend to recommend patch or gel first. If you have a bowel condition that's going to affect the absorption of the tablet, that would be another reason to go for what we call transdermal through the skin. Some people don't like the idea of a patch sticking on, and some people don't like the idea of swallowing a daily tablet. So you go by preference first, because I may have in my head theoretical reasons why one type might be better than another, but if you say to me, oh no, I don't fancy that, then we're going to go with what you say.
No. Well, you've got one question from FB Live. That stands for Facebook.
About hair.
Oh,
yeah.
Someone wants to know what they can do about thinning hair.
About thinning hair. That's a good one. What can you do about it?
So sometimes replacing the estrogen does help, but in my experience, it should do. So although there's the sort of aging effect and all the stuff that Nelson's talked about, how to look after it and not overwash it and over-chemicalize it and all that stuff, and sometimes often people have asked if there is an estrogen lack effect, does HRT help? In my experience, some people have, but not as good as you would expect it to. You can't reliably say if you go into HRT it will make a big difference. And anything that's affecting the hair growth, my understanding is it can take quite a long time. So it can take quite a few months to notice.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not an instant thing at all. For my big piece of advice would be embrace your hair as it is and allow it to re-stimulate itself.
And last but absolutely best, I'd like to thank all of you for coming along, for getting involved, for asking lots of questions, because that's great, because that's really generated the conversation that we wanted to have, which is about talking menopause. So please, please take this conversation and go and share it with other people, share it with other women, so that we can start to break down that taboo, which is about something that is a very, very natural and normal part of our journey through life. So thank you very much, everybody.
I
think tonight has generated a really great conversation, a real conversation, real people talking about the real issues that are the menopause. Menopause it's part of our natural journey as women, and it affects all of us in very different and unique ways. And the uniqueness of this evening, the environment that we were in, the people who were talking about it was absolutely a mirror of that uniqueness and that specialness of our journey. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and Heather and Nelson were fab together.